Let's get salty!
Everyone, Zeddy here again today with a brand new video, and it is time to take a deep meta dive in Hearthstone because there's some absolute craziness going on in the game. There's a lot of outrage towards one particular card that we're going to talk a lot about, probably appears in the thumbnail. It is one of the most historic things I've ever seen when a card's been nerfed multiple times and appears that much in a deck. It's absolutely nuts. We're going to talk about all this stuff. Enjoy the content on the channel. If you like, I've earned your subscription, please hit that sub button down below. Give the video a like, it helps us out a lot. So the Hearthstone meta, we had nerfs go live last Thursday. It's been almost a week. And if you look at the front page stats, you'd be like, oh, it's an unbalanced mess with Hunter, Warrior, and Paladin being the only good classes in the game with everything else sucking. The front page of H's replay is not very good. It includes all ranks, all archetypes. Let's take a dive into the meta where things have, in my opinion, have actually improved. After the big patch to over 30 cards to help with agency at Hearthstone, there's a lot more diversity and, in my opinion, at least a lot less like blowout decks and OTK. Control's kind of struggling, but let's go into it. So, at Legend, since the latest patch, we are seeing quite a few classes and archetypes present. Apparently, according to these stats, at tier 1, we have Spell Token Hunter and Blood Paladin. Blood Paladin can just like flood the board with like Sea Giants and tokens, and 0-mana Zilliaxes and Spell Token Hunter kind of goes for a similar strat of flooding the board, saddling up, and killing your opponent. Hand buff Paladin is a merch. It's funny, Paladin was like murdered a couple patches ago, and now with all the other classes getting nerfed, it's catching right back up. Then we have the most contentious deck in the entire meta right now. We'll take a look at some of like the Reddit posts, but Highlander Warrior, Brann or Deepminer Brann, absolutely running amok, making people frustrated. So you do have one control deck that kind of shuts down all the control decks. Again, I think we'll go into that a little bit later. Sludge Warlock is up there, another aggro deck. Zaremi Priest still really good, taking that extra turn, more of a mid-range. It's a weird mid-range combo deck that also could be a flood aggro deck. It kind of does like everything. Breakfast Hunter, which I love the name. I'm like, what in the heck is this? But apparently, I think it's Reno Hunter. They just call it Breakfast Hunter because it runs Mystery Egg. So yes, there's a deck that's running Mystery Egg that's actually doing pretty well. So that's kind of cool. Got Pain Warlock is still apparently playable. Shopper, Demon Hunter's back. Hero Power Druid, Dragon Druid. And then at the bottom here, you got the Reno decks. And I got a theory why they're not doing as well, but Reno Shaman, Reno Druid, Reno Paladin. And the complaints I'm seeing a lot of aren't about that guy, Reno Lone Ranger. It's a 9-mana board clear. It's annoying, but at the end of the day, it's a 9-mana board clear. All the talk is about Brann. We have countless suggestions of how to fix Brann by making his battle cries trigger for the rest of the game. A buff proposal for tier 4 warrior, they're calling. If your deck started with no duplicates for the rest of the game, your battle cry minions have +1 attack. How worn out is this one? How worn out is that? We've done it enough. Warsong Commander's even back to his original state. Let's come up with new memes, all right? Somebody proposing an idea of making the double battle cry attached to a mine itself so it would get poofed by Reno. Actually a pretty cool suggestion. Probably one of the best ones I've seen if you were to nerf it. Yeah, battle cry excavate twice. What else would a miner do? You can see there's a lot of outrage towards the archetype, despite it not being the best one out there, but it kind of gives you an idea of why people are like that. Because yeah, Donkey.top showing similar stats. You know, we got Hunter being the best, Aggro Paladin, but look how many Highlander Warrior lists are out there. People are just playing it like crazy. And if you look at Legend, it's no different. It is by far one of the more popular archetypes outside of Hunter, which might see a tiny bit more play, but it's the feeling of what Highlander Warrior does to you, where it's similar to, let's say, like Caverns Below or Wheel Warlock, where you play Deepminer Brann, it basically says win the game if you don't kill them right away, because the battle cry value they get, whether it's from Inventor Boom, Zilliax itself, your Excavates, Boom Boss, which is still absolutely busted, no deck can outvalue that. Doubling your battle cries is just a broken effect, and we just went through a full year of that guy, regular Brann, dominating with like Astalor and Sire Denathrius and got Instrider nerfed. Like, we've already been through that. We know how this card is, so it's like, Why did we go through this route again? I get it's got the requirement, the Highlander requirement, but at the end of the day, that requirement can no longer be countered. It can only be ratted. And even if you rat this card, I still find I like struggle against it. There's no guarantee of it. It's a frustrating thing. So you take a look at the other control-ish style of decks, or like decks that want to play the late game, a Reno Shaman, a Reno Druid, a Reno Paladin. You look at their matchups and how they line up. Reno Shaman, 34% into Warrior. Reno Druid, 41% into Highlander Warrior. This is Highlander Druid, just to double check that I'm showing it. And Highlander Paladin, 33%. It just crushes. It obliterates all those slower decks. So now the meta, there's not many OTKs left, thankfully for that. Although Nature Shaman, sadly, is like rank 1 legend strategy already. Watching Theo play it like top 10, facing Nature Shamans all day. The win rates are not showing great for it, so I'm hoping it's just they're wanting to play it. But regardless, Brann itself is like the Wheel of Death. It's like those cards where no other class, no other late game class can compete. And I think it needs a fundamental reworking. I mean, you could make it 7, 8, make it unplayable, right? But then it's just a dead card in your collection. I don't know if you limit how many times it can double your battle cry, like your next 3 battle cries double. So you gotta be really selective with them. But as it stands, the way Deepminer Brann works and the popularity of it, like looking at the decks right now, Highlander Warrior, the most popular deck in Hearthstone, you can't play any other slower strategy. And the most popular strats, at least people like, you know, that comment on Reddit or social media, my videos typically cater towards later game things, not the aggro, not the combo decks. So a card like Deepminer Brann ruins the fun of every other slower deck out there. There's counters to it. There's like Excavate Warlock, whether it's bugged or not bugged, seems to work. There are decks that beat it, but for the most part, it feels like a decks that a lot of people don't love to play and want to play their fun, more late game stuff. They want to play Reno in other classes, but right now it feels like a real struggle because when you queue into Warrior, it feels pretty horrible. Outside of that though, the meta to me feels better. It already, you look at it, it's more diverse, it's more board centric. There are early blowouts, especially with like the Flood Paladins of the world and the Zarini Priests of the world. But at the end of the day, at least there's a fighting for board. You're not seeing Nature Shaman being very popular, but I will say that I basically tweeted out, can we nuke this card from orbit? Like, why is it even a risk of this thing working out? Just the gameplay it promotes. And again, I'm going to stick to it. I think it's going to be a problem again at some point. And again, I'm seeing it a high legend, but maybe it's just a biased thing. But what I like to say is this is the change Hearthstone needs. Brann should just say, if your deck start with no duplicates, give your other cards a glorious beard. Who doesn't like a nice beard? But yeah, I think Brann needs to be adjusted. Whether he's the best deck or not, it's what he represents, what he locks out makes the game, I think, worse, right? And I'm the someone who really likes Reno Warrior, Control Warrior. I just really don't like the Brann aspect of it. The other thing I wanted to talk about, which is just insane, this card's been nerfed twice. Zilliax has been nerfed twice, right? The ticking module and the virus module. And you would think, okay, that card's been nerfed twice. Its play rate, we already went over it. It was like around 70%. Surely it went down. Nope, it is now at 71.9% of decks in standard at legend since the latest patch, because more board decks are being promoted right now, and it's a really good board card. And well, there's so many different versions of it, right? Like, it's a billion cards in one, so it is a little bit skewed that, yeah, like the ticking modules in some, and you got the lifesteal, like the precision model, whatever it's called in others. It's not quite the same, but if you lump it all together, Zilliax is in almost 3/4 of the decks you face on ladder. And I just think that's crazy. I don't see it as a problem as long as none of those are like, you know, oppressive or crazy, but I still hear people complaining about the ticking module. I even hear complaints about the big lifesteal one because it just kind of wins the game too a lot of the time. There's still complaints about it, but when a card you see in 3 out of 4 games, you're probably going to complain a little bit about it. And Reno has not bumped up a lot, despite the fact his restrictions have been removed in terms of like being countered. Still like 34%. I think when we went over this before, it was like 33%. So big spike to Zilliax, if anything, and Reno is kind of just staying in there, like 1/3 of the deck. Again, to me, the meta feels a little bit better. The majority of the complaints aren't about Reno Lone Ranger. It is about Deepminer Brann, and I do think they're justified. and I do hope the team does take a look at Brann and maybe assess, you know, how much he warps those late game battles. Anyways, let me know in the comments down below how you're feeling about that bearded man, what you would like to see happen, how you're feeling about the meta, and also, do you think Zilliax at 72% is fine? And honestly, I do. I don't really have an issue with it. Anyways, if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Have a great day and stay salty, my friends.